Hi, my name's Jordan Hawkey, and over the next few videos I'm going to be exploring different types of writing, how they vary, and how best to approach writing each one, as well as some techniques and things to be aware of. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to write a short story. So, what is a short story? A short story is a piece of writing that tells a tale but has a limit on how many words it can be, usually not much more than a few thousand words. Despite this, the author still needs to present within the text mostly the same concepts as a regular novel. So, what goes in a short story? In a short story, there is a beginning, a middle, and an end, like any piece of writing. The beginning must set the scene and introduce characters. The middle introduces complications and events. Finally, the end presents the resolution to the complication, and occasionally what the characters have learned and how they've developed. The first question you should ask yourself is, what is my story going to be about? What is the topic of my story? And possibly, what is the moral I wish to present at the end? You can't start planning until you at least know the theme of what you're writing. When choosing a theme, keep in mind not to choose something too complex, as you don't have many words to explore it fully. Deciding to write a fantasy epic is probably not the best idea, as that usually takes thousands and thousands of words. However, you could write about a single event in a fantasy adventure, as usually they're quite short. You can sometimes even look at a novel as a collection of short stories that are all interconnected. The next question you might ask would be, how many words should be in the beginning of a short story? How many words should I dedicate to introducing setting and character? The answer is, of course, that depends. It depends on the story you are trying to tell and what your word limit is. For say 1,000 words, you might allow 100 to 150 words in your introduction. Keep in mind that whatever you do, the less words you spend on the intro, the more you have on the events and the nitty-gritty bits of your story. After this, you'll be writing the core of your story, the complication and events. When choosing what your complication is, keep in mind it needs to be simple and easy to understand for the reader, as you don't have many words to work with. Sometimes the complication may be presented in the introduction. This is an effective way to hook your reader into reading your piece and continuing to the end, as they want to see what happens. When deciding what events will take place, you need to remember a few things. First, how does the event relate to how the protagonist is solving the complication? You don't have room for side stories and subplots, as you don't have enough words to work with. Secondly, when coming up with events, remember the rule of 3. Write about 2 things that didn't work, and then write about a third event which solves the problem. Finally, remember CHEKHOV'S gun. CHEKHOV'S gun is a rule that states if you say in the first chapter there is a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third chapter, it absolutely must go off. If it's not going to be fired, it shouldn't be there. What this means is essentially, don't needlessly mention details that aren't important to the story. If you mention something seemingly unimportant at the start of the story, it should be used as a plot point later on. This is particularly relevant with short stories, as you obviously do not have as many words to work with, so every word counts. Finally, we're at the end, the conclusion of your short story. Here you need to wrap up the events of the story succinctly and convey anything the protagonist has learned. You shouldn't need many words to do this, and your conclusion should segue smoothly from your last event. This makes the story more fluid and cohesive. Now, let's have a look at do's and don'ts of writing a short story. Some of this will be repetitive to what we've already discussed, but that just shows the importance of it being followed. First, the do's. It may seem redundant stating this, but keep it short. It's in the name of a short story, but many people can get lost in the narrative while writing, and it ends up longer than it's meant to be. Next, keep a small cast of characters in your story. You realistically only need maybe at most 3 characters to tell a short story. Any more can weigh the story down and won't allow you to grow them, preventing you from fully developing them in your limited word count. This smoothly brings me to the next point. Have a single focus. Your story should be about one thing. Don't cram other unnecessary subplots in it. You don't have the room. Next, create a super interesting and surprise ending. Adding a twist at the end will help make your story memorable to your readers. Finally, a point which is relevant in any story format: show, don't say. Rather than stating your protagonist is feeling a certain way, make them do something that shows that. For example, instead of stating they are happy, say they smiled. This reduces your word count and can convey more meaning than just they are happy. Now, we move on to the don'ts. As you can guess, long descriptions don't have a home in short stories. They reduce the number of words in which you have to tell the actual story. Using language that is connotative and insinuative helps convey your description with less words. Next, don't change genre or topic of your story throughout. Choose your theme carefully and don't stray from it, as it can make it difficult to convey the whole story. Now, suspense. Don't use it. You don't have time to build suspense in a short story. Give your reader all the information needed as soon as possible. Finally, don't change the perspective the story is written from. You don't have the luxury of space to explore the tale from different points of view. So pick one and stick with it. The easiest to write from is usually third person omniscient and first person. Next, we're going to talk about what drives a short story. What makes your reader want to continue to read on? For each point, I'm going to show you a picture and you're going to guess the point. First, a person with a megaphone. Got your guess? The answer is, make sure your story has a character in it the reader can cheer on and support. If there is no one the reader empathizes the cause of, then why would they read on? You need to make sure that one character is relatable to the reader. Next, we have someone's lunch. What do you think this means? The answer is, of course, motive. Every single character in your story needs to have a motive. It doesn't have to be a complicated motive, though. In fact, it's probably better if it's not. It can be as simple as a character wanting to eat their lunch. For the next one, we have a list. This one could be a bit deceiving, so I'm going to add some color to help you out. Still don't know? Don't make everything go according to plan. It sounds bad, but be a sadist. Your reader doesn't want to read a story where everything goes right as rain and nothing happens. A short story is far more interesting when you have your characters go through an ordeal that they then have to solve or deal with. This will show to your reader what your characters are made of and help further develop them. Also, bonus point if you notice that I use the rule of 3. But there is one more point. For this one, you've got a bin. I will now demonstrate how to break the rule of 3 for comedic effect, and also give you a hint. Still don't know? I've mentioned this a lot. That's right. Don't waste words. Say it with me now. Don't waste words. Short stories inherently aren't long, so utilizing every sentence and word is important. An easy way to make sure you're doing this is for each sentence to do one of 2 things. Reveal or develop your character, or advance the action in the story. If every sentence does this, then you shouldn't have too many issues. Now, I've talked a lot about types of things to do and avoid, but what if you're stuck on an idea? First of all, use personal experience as a reference point. It is much easier writing about something you know and have experienced than something you haven't. If that fails, try using a dream as inspiration. They can be very interesting and different. However, be very careful when doing this, as dreams can often not make much sense when you begin to think about them. Now we're quickly going to address rule breaking. You must be thinking at this point, but I've seen those rules broken, Jordan. To that I say, remember, they're more like guidelines anyway. Some of them are hard and fast, but many can be broken. You just need to be careful. Here are some examples, starting from the left. First one is suspense. Obviously, if you're writing a horror, you're probably going to want some suspense. Next, rule of 3. As you have already seen in this video, breaking the rule of 3 can be done, especially for comedy. Next is open ending. You can end your narrative with the reader guessing, of course. Characters. Ooh. You could have no characters and be writing about, say, a can of paint. However, in that case, your can of paint is technically the character. Finally, the last one is switching genre. You can do this, but you have to be careful. It is easy to stuff up. Now, I've got one more principle that I want to tell you about before we wrap up, and that is the KISS principle. KISS. What do you think it means? K-I-S-S. It actually has 2 interpretations. One is, keep it simple, sweetheart. The other is my preferred one, and is fairly similar. Keep it simple, stupid. Use whichever one helps you remember to keep all your plot points, motives, and events simple. If you do this, then it is easier for the reader to understand what's going on. Before we wrap up, I'd like to ask you to think back through the video. What is the most important thing you have learned about writing short stories? If the answer is something along the lines of don't waste words, keep it short, or make every word count, then clearly I have said it enough and done my job right. I hope you enjoyed this video on short stories and have learnt a lot about how to write them. Look out for the next video, and I hope you use what you have learnt in your future writing endeavours. Thanks so much for watching.